What's up, and welcome to the Wealth Exchange. It's your man, Ephraim Jackson, your licensed financial coach and your guide to kingdom wealth building. Thank you for joining me on this podcast. We are all about exchanging information, exchanging ideas to help you grow in your wealth and your faith at the same time. So for today's episode, I had to bring somebody on so we can talk about real estate and entrepreneurship. If anybody follows me in any groups or social media, you know I'm big on talking about the three pillars of wealth: investing, real estate, and doing entrepreneurship. If you want to grow wealth, you got to be doing something in one or all three of these categories. So today I got my man with me here. He is the owner of Juergens Property Development, and he's also a real estate owner as well, up about 8 properties or so, and has been doing this for a while. So I wanted to bring him on just to pick his brain a little bit about how he got into real estate, how he got into entrepreneurship, and maybe share some tips and secrets that'll help you as well. So thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome Alex Juergens to the show. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Ephraim.
Hey, appreciate you coming. No, I appreciate you, man, for coming, especially short notice, brother. So that's how you know you always got somebody that's really, really down for you. They just short notice. They just
That's right. Well, I only know what I'm doing tomorrow. You know, I don't know what I'm doing on Wednesday. So
yeah, that's no. He was on point. For those listening or watching and don't know the background, so literally, like yesterday, when I know this is probably airing a little bit later, but literally the day before, I said, hey, I want to get you on so we can talk about real estate. He said, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? I was like, oh man, let me check my calendar. So that's also appreciate you, man. Appreciate you coming on. So yeah. I want to talk about, real estate. I want to talk about entrepreneurship, what you're doing, both of those things right now. So tell the people just a little bit, like, how did you get started in, managing properties and being a landlord, and then also, doing what you do for your business, property development, where you're going in and doing home remodeling and those kind of things. How did you get started with all
that? Well, I started out with, I guess maybe on the real estate side, and so I thought, okay, well, how am I going to do this then? And it was back in 08 or so, and 06, maybe it was 06, and saw a house and I said, I'm gonna buy this house. There was a investor that I knew of that would give me, 20 grand or whatever to renovate this home. I was gonna flip it, and it was a pretty decent sized project, and worked on it in the evenings and weekends and got it done. And that was like right at this bubble crash, and
right,
a friend of mine called me.
08, 09. That's when a lot of stuff was going south.
Yeah, I can't remember when it was, but a friend of mine who's a realtor, I was going to sell it by owner. And a friend of mine who's a realtor said to me, "You better drop that price 10 grand." And I just said, "No way. There's no way I'm going to do that. I'm not going to lose 10 grand in a heartbeat like that." And so I had this buyer who was interested, and I said, "Okay, they had to sell their house." So I just said, "Okay, I'm gonna buy your house. You buy my house, I'll buy your house." And I said, I'll rent your house. And I said, I can lose 10 grand in a heartbeat, or I can lose 10 grand over so amount of time, I'll just jump right into this and see how it works,
So you got started doing the rental, or did you get started doing the kind of fixing and flipping?
I just did one flip. Yeah. And I haven't touched it since, but then I was forced right into that rental property, and got a tenant right away. I have had a tenant in there for 14 years.
Oh, awesome, man. Awesome.
That's the good they just left. So I'm into a renovation now, but I didn't lose the $10,000 and did well on that property. So awesome. I've held that. And so that got my feet wet, and I said, okay, I need to buy some more. So shortly after that, maybe 2 years later, I bought 3 more kind of in a package.
Right.
That kind of set the ball rolling. So we spent quite a bit of time, my wife and I spent quite a bit of time just sitting on those 2, mainly because I guess here's maybe into what mistakes maybe I made, or maybe it was just more of lessons learned, we were making 0 off of those properties. There was no cash flow. In fact, it was negative cash flow for probably like 5 years.
Right.
On those things. I probably had to.
You're helping to cover the difference then. For those people listening, may not know what that means. You're covering the difference on those properties then, instead of them cash flowing to you then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I think I was like $100 in the hole every month, when the properties were full.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's hilarious to think about it now. And it wasn't crazy stressful, but because I knew how to do everything that the house needed, you know. Um, when there was a vacancy, man, my wife and I, we jumped all over that thing to get
Right.
it cleaned up, get it right back, because we were losing money fast when, and we probably could afford a couple of months where they were empty, but
So why did you choose real estate? Like what attracted you when you were like, okay, I think I'm going to do this? Because you finally had to pull the trigger and do it, right? Because I see a lot of people where they're kind of in between that gray area where they're thinking about pulling the trigger and doing something, and they just keep thinking, and then another year passes, and then another year passes, and then another year passes. So what was it that was finally, nope, I'm going to pull the trigger, I'm going to do this? Like what attracted you to say, yes, I'm going to do real estate?
well, I think some of them were some of the connections that I had that were encouraging me to do that.
Yeah.
Some friends that were doing it, and they had some success doing it. And then I had a lender who was telling me, "Hey, let's see what we can do to do some creative financing on these things," and
Mhm.
and it was allowing me to get into these with virtually no money down. Now it still cost me it still cost me a ton
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I had second mortgage on my house, you know what I mean? But
yeah.
I didn't have any cash at the time.
Right.
No cash at the time. I just had equity in my current home that allowed me to get a hold of these four homes. And um so it was something that was risky, but yet I wasn't like throwing a whole bunch of my own what I guess uh like out of my bank account
Right, right,
into
right.
this thing. And then it felt like something that I can control. I could work on them.
Mhm.
I'm a people person, I can get them filled up, and I just had a lot of confidence in myself to be able
Right.
to be able to do it.
So you hit on something that I think is key that I think keeps people from moving in that direction. You said something like you had the confidence in yourself to do it, because I think a lot of people get put off by the risk related to real estate, but there's really risk in just about anything that you do. I mean, it's about controlling the risk as best you can, and then having that confidence and saying, okay, I'm doing X to control the risk. If something happens, okay, here's the worst that can happen, here's the best that can happen. But I think most people tend to focus on only the worst that can happen, and they never focus on all the good things that can happen as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was the worst that could happen is we could lose them, and lose what we had as far as equity in our house, we were just willing to do that. We didn't have anything anyways.
Right. You say willing to take the chance. So what are some
So
of the misconceptions you think people have when it comes to real estate? I know I got a couple bubbling in my head right now. When you think about real estate, and because I think people have a lot of misconceptions of what it means to be a property owner, what it means to go after tenants and care for tenants and care for your properties. I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm just going to get some property and it's passive income. It's just going to manage itself. I'm just going to, because you hear people talk about that all the time on TV. Get passive income, get real estate.
right.
And my personal thoughts, I don't know about you. I only own a couple of properties. You own more than I do, but they're not super passive. Like there's still things you got to do proactively to manage it. So
Yeah,
what do you think some misconceptions people have?
oh, I think exactly what you say. But for one, is that I buy them, and then these people won't call me. They'll be there for several years, and I'll make bank on it. And then when they're done, they won't trash the place. and and um, so yeah, misconception is that you can just sit back and just relax. Now there are times that happens.
Yeah,
We've had years go by where we just like, what did we do this year? About nothing, collect the rent and made sure the bills were paid, you know. And I think that people are, um, misconception, maybe not, but they just aren't willing to take that risk, you
yeah,
know. They have zero connections, and I think maybe if they have zero connections or they're not willing to make any connections, then that's probably not for them, you
Mm,
know. But you've got to get a relationship with a lender or a realtor or somebody to help you along here,
yeah,
to give you some options, educate you a little bit as
yeah.
to what you can do here, you know.
Yeah, that's
um
so true, man. It helps when you have a team, like because you mentioned
mhm.
something about having friends that were already doing it and kind of egging you on, and because that's a good example of a good team, a good accountability that are egging you on in a positive direction. And it's kind of the same with me. I had friends that were, that own maybe 30, 40 something properties, and they were, and I would go to their houses and help them paint the walls, and I'm doing all this stuff, and I'm helping them do stuff, and at the same time I'm thinking, hmm. And then they're giving me advice. So I think that's so true. Just having the right people around you, and then having the courage to go form a team if you don't have one. Because I think you're
Yeah.
right. Connections is probably a thing that people will say, "Oh, I can't get started because I don't know X, Y, and Z." But if you get the right team, then the rest will come. So I think that's good. That's a good point.
Yeah, go get the information, and read the books. Now, the right books, because there's some of them that are going to paint this picture that's just not true to you,
Yeah.
But um, yeah, making connections, being a people person, and trying to glean off of other people.
Right. I think another misconception I think people make, the one thinking everything is just going to be super passive, you're never going to have any problems. But I think the other thing is they misanticipate the actual cost, of doing business, because they don't look at real estate as a business, right?
Yes.
And so, a lot of people fall in love with a particular property, and not I always say, don't fall in love with the property, fall in love with the numbers, right? And so
Yeah.
they have this misconception of, oh, if I get this property, it's immediately going to rent out, or it's immediately, this place is so great, it's just, I'm going to definitely be able to get it for this amount of rent. And I think people just don't do their numbers right. So did you struggle with that when you first got started? You mentioned being negative on some properties. Like how long did it take you to finally start getting a good sense of, yep, I know how to look at a good deal, or no, I know how to, what works numbers wise for us? Or how long did it take you to get a sense of that?
Oh, several years. Like I said, I think 5 years or so. We were
Mm-hmm.
negative on them, and I think maybe the only way that we climbed out of that negative was by refinancing,
Yeah.
and um, and then we were allowed, then we were able to get some cash flow. A few of them increased. My my philosophy, probably within that 5 years even, was that I was never going to raise the rent,
Yeah.
and I didn't, you know, right or wrong. It kept tenants in there, but at the same time, and that's what I really needed, was to keep tenants in there,
Hmm.
because if I lose $800 in a month, there's that $50 or whatever that I could have increased
Right.
and gotten. So anyway, I kind of forgot the question now, but we
Or
just slowly climbed out of it,
yeah.
and one great thing about it was it kept us personally lean on our personal side of our finances.
Mm,
That we're going to keep the same lifestyle, and we have for a long time just kept the same lifestyle. As those have increased, if the cash flow has been there for those,
right.
we've just kept the same lifestyle that we've had, slowly increasing, but we didn't say, oh, well, now we're making 10,000 on these rental properties a year. Let's up our standard of living 10,000 more and go back to
Right.
zero again. And so I think that was a big deal for us, is um, these began to make money, and we stayed where we were at, and we began to climb out of that hole pretty quick,
Right. Right. No, that's good, man.
from that point.
I think that's key too, as you start, because you said something I want to touch base on again. You said it took several years to start feeling comfortable with being able to identify deals and being able to get the numbers right and to move in that direction. But that wouldn't have come if you wouldn't have just jumped and just taken the leap and started somewhere, right? That knowledge, because there's a certain amount of knowledge I think you can get, in books and in talking to people, but there's a certain set of knowledge that only comes from actually doing it, because
Oh yeah.
it's a different type of knowledge. So I would encourage people, listening and watching. One, yeah, definitely get in the books, definitely do those things, but find a mentor, right? That's one thing I wish I would have done differently. If I had a time machine, I can do it over. Find somebody who's been doing it a while and just ask them, say, hey, can I come along with you as you look at some properties so I can see what you're looking at? Like, can I see how you're crunching the numbers? Can I come along when you're showing the property to tenants just to see how you're screening for tenants?
Yeah.
And a lot of these things I've learned myself, trial and error, just kind of doing it on my own.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, definitely do those things. But if you had a time machine, that's something I would do different. I would go get a mentor. I would go maybe actually do these walk-alongs with somebody. If you had a time machine, what would you do differently as far as your foray into real estate? Is it something mistakes that you said, you know what, I definitely wouldn't do that again, or things that you would correct?
Well, I guess, I can look back at some tenants that I decided to sign a lease with that were just no good, very right off the bat, you
Yeah,
know. Um, but I'm super thankful that I took those risks.
yeah,
Um, it just catapulted so many other things that went on in our lives to take more risks, to do some different endeavors, and to go for some things. And so it also forced me to be thirsty for knowledge too, to go
yeah,
get it, and so
yeah,
sometimes you say you don't really, before I even get started, I don't even know what I don't know.
yeah.
And then you get into it and you say, okay, well, this is what I don't know, so I got to go find the answers to this exact question, you know and find out what I need to ask a mentor or ask somebody who's been in it. It's tough for me to say that I have regrets
Hmm.
uh, in it. I've certainly done things wrong.
Yeah.
Um, Certainly spend a whole lot more money than what I needed to.
But you
you know,
learned from whatever those mistakes were. So it's
yeah,
good
yeah,
to have
and so
people
I'm
teach that.
super grateful for that. To say fast forward, from 15 years later from that first property, I'm super grateful for where I'm at
Yeah. Yeah.
and where we're at on with that side of our business, with the real estate side of our business. I can't imagine it being any better, but maybe if I would have done some things differently, 10 years ago, I'd probably be in a better position. But I'm just grateful for where we're at now and looking forward, you know.
No, that's good, man. That's really good. So, one of the things I hear people talk about a lot when it comes to real estate and business, not just real estate, but business too, is people have to get over this fear of taking those steps. And when you're dealing with real estate, that what I hear a lot of people say, oh, I'm afraid of, one, how am I going to get funding to get a property? And then the other thing I always hear is, I'm afraid of getting a tenant, from a nightmare tenant and just causing tons of problems. And they're just scared to death of that. Or if it's business, they're like, oh no, I'm just scared of the rejection of having to deal with clients and customers. So did you ever have any of those kind of fear moments, either you or your wife, and maybe you didn't, maybe you kind of plowed ahead, but did you ever have any of those moments where there was kind of a little bit of that little bit of, oh God, what am I doing? What am I?
Yeah, totally. Totally. I mean, there were, my wife and I are communicate very closely,
Yeah.
and we talk about everything, but real estate isn't one of them a whole lot, especially in those first probably 10 years,
Yeah. So
it's just,
you kind of handled the real estate mostly yourself then.
yeah.
Got you.
And it was just kind of like it. I realized very quickly that maybe just need to just let that be just to myself. You know what I mean? And because she would stress a lot more about it. I
Yeah.
would just plow forward and say, whatever, I made a mistake with that person or whatever, and we're going to move on. You know, and it was tough that those first, I say 5 or 6 years. I don't know exactly how many it was,
Yeah.
but when you got negative cash flow and you're making mistakes left and right, and um and there's two of you there, one of you is probably saying, hey, maybe we should jump ship on this thing, but
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
wasn't I was not willing to do that at all,
Abandonment was not an option. Huh?
no, not because of what I could lose, but I just felt like there was just so much to gain
Mm,
by just pressing on,
yeah.
and yeah, there were definitely hard things. There were plenty of things that I just said, I better keep that to myself, I
Mhm.
don't want to talk about this part too much, you know what I mean?
No, 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 no.
My wife's gonna watch
Yeah, well,
this,
she's
but
gonna be watching like,
she know,
what are you talking about?
but she knows. And these days as things are going, things are flowing so much better.
Yeah,
It's just, well, it's just easier to take things, the ups and downs are, pretty steady, and that's just my personality anyways. But
so your personality played a lot into dealing with that fear. It sounds like your wife has maybe a little more fear inclined when it comes to real estate than you, but
we say
I think
fear, but we balance each other,
exactly, that's kind of where I was going. You got to have that balance, even if you're, and I think that's great. And for married couples, you can have that balance. Even if you're a person and you're trying to do this, by yourself and you're single, still having some kind of accountability person or somebody that balances you out, that can see both sides. Because I can see it both ways. Because you can have somebody that has a personality that's go go go, and they take tons of risks and they never ever stop, even when the ship is sinking and they're just playing that fiddle, man,
Yeah,
as it's going
yeah,
down. And they know they should jump, but they refuse to. But then you also have those people where the ship can be saved if you just hang on a little bit longer. So having that balance is key, and being able to have somebody who can balance your ideas and bounce ideas off of, I think is really good and really key with that. For me, when the fear came, because to me, I don't mind taking risks. Because for some reason, people think I don't like taking risks. For some reason, I don't know how. Maybe it's because I'm in finance and people assume financial guys don't take risks. But I believe in taking calculated risk, right?
yeah.
I like to stack the deck in my favor a certain percentage, and then if it's stacked in the favor, then I say, okay, let's pull the trigger. So if you're listening and you're dealing with the same thing you're dealing about fear, just know that there's ways to mitigate the tenants that you get. There's ways to screen tenants properly, and that's why I encourage people to do those kind of walk-alongs with people if you can, so you can learn what are you looking for in a good tenant. What does it mean to review a person's credit report? I review credit report. I review pay stubs. I call references. I do the whole nine. I'm pretty crazy thorough when it comes to checking tenants.
Yeah,
And I've never had a bad tenant. I've never had a bad experience with a tenant. I've never had anybody not pay rent. I've never had
that's great.
experiences since I became a landlord in 2012. Everything's gone pretty well. And I think part of that is by mitigating those risks, right? And being able to read people. If it's a fear of where to get the money and funding, I think you hit on that you found some creative funding methods and you had some people that can help you out with that. So I just want to encourage people to not be hung up on those things. That there's always a way around those things if they want to. So no, that's good, man. That's really good. So I got to talk about a little bit, man, about your relationship with Christ and how you've incorporated that in your business, and both the real estate and your property development business. How have you managed to incorporate that into what you do, and how important would you tell someone who's trying to do one of these two things, either entrepreneurship or real estate, to make sure they have Christ incorporated into what they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, he's like you've talked about how, what with God, without God,
Yeah,
there's these, what can we do
yeah,
with the leading of Christ in our lives? And there's so much personal interaction
yeah.
that I have with people, that I find it so rewarding to just care for people,
Mm,
and share the love of Christ with people. There's been so many people that I've been able to just care for them and encourage them with with an encouraging word, with scripture, with inviting them to church. And I'm talking about tenants of mine, where
yeah,
that sometimes can be an uncomfortable part of the relationship sometimes,
yeah.
but I mean, my wife and I, we want to give, and that's huge. We feel like that when we tithe and when we give offerings, then God opens doors for us
Mm,
to have knowledge, to just have open doors for, I say, deals, or things to increase our wealth and then be able to give more. I think that's how God created things to work, is that he uses us to fund his kingdom, and so he needs us to do that. On the uh, construction side, um, uh, I love to serve people,
Amen. That's good.
and enjoy getting to know their families, and I feel like that they see Christ in me, and in my guys that I bring onto the site, and it draws people to him, and that's, that's the whole idea.
No, that's so good, man. I'm a firm believer in incorporating, God into everything, every aspect of our lives. Just because we're a entrepreneur, or if we're real estate or investing or whatever it is, he should still be a part of everything that we do. And I think we should strive to find ways to incorporate him in our businesses. One of the things that I do, even for my tenants, I pray every day for my tenants, and it's not just that pray that they pay rent or whatever, but it's like that'd be kind of a selfish prayer. But no, I literally just pray and just say, hey, bless their lives. How can I be a better servant to them? A friend of mine that owns a ton of property. He's not a person of faith yet. We're still working on him, but when I told him some of the things I do for my tenants, as far as like, praying for them and sending them birthday cards, or being available to serve them, and if things come up, and he's like, man, you do all that he said, I'm not doing any of that for my people. Like, why would you do all of that? I said, because, man, it's not just a business to me. These are, I want people to see Christ in me. So yeah, I'm going to pray for them. Yeah, I'm going to, if I hear they're sick, I'm going to see how they're doing or check on them. I'm going to do these different things, and just doing these small things to incorporate you. I think we can have a profound impact by doing that.
Definitely.
So that's really
Definitely.
good. That's really good. So I'm gonna close up, man. We can keep talking about this forever. I might have to have you back and maybe
I know.
some specifics, because I know people want to hear specifics about, hey, how do I get a deal? How do I look at it? And I'd love to do that with people sometime. Maybe even do a Q&A sometime with folks. I think would be good. But I'm gonna close out. Maybe we just talk about some key takeaways for our time here today. And for me, if I think about key takeaways from our conversation, I think the biggest takeaway for me is, number one, don't be afraid to get started. That you will learn more doing than just by reading and doing these things. Take the action, do it. And if you're nervous, get a mentor, right? If you're nervous about making mistakes, you're still going to probably make them. So you're going to have some that you make, but get a mentor, find somebody that can work with you and show you some of these things to help kind of take some of that tension and stress away from you. And then definitely incorporate Christ into whatever you do and into the business that you do. So that's my key
Definitely.
takeaways. What key takeaways would you have, or would you want to leave people with?
Yeah, if you're thinking about going for it, get those people around you that are going to help you do it, that are going to encourage you. A bank lender, a realtor, a friend that does it,
Yeah.
like you did. Soak up as much knowledge as you can about it. There's so much out there that might be just such a broad range of thinking. You listen to a podcast and it's all about multifamily or
Yeah.
these huge developments that people are doing, and you just say, that's just not me, and so I'm not gathering anything from it. But each little tidbit that you can get from these things, and these and understanding people's personalities doing this too is a big deal.
Yeah.
The people that are doing it, and understand how is it that they deal with the risk, is important. I've read a lot of books, mindset,
Yeah.
grit. Those are some good books. Soak up the knowledge is my takeaway.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I'm going to piggyback real quick on something you said before we close out, because I think it was good. You mentioned about some certain groups having multifamily or certain things. And I just want to impress upon people to find the area of real estate that makes sense for you, right? Because we've been talking a lot about renting and tenants, but there's a lot of different ways to get into real estate, because maybe you're an introvert and you're like, well, I don't want to deal with tenants. Well, you don't have to. Maybe you want to do wholesaling. Maybe you want to do fixing and flipping, where you only you're not dealing with tenants in those situations. So there's a lot of different things you can do. Find the method that works for you. I'm kind of a long-term buy and hold kind of person. It's kind of that's kind of you too, right? So those are kind of our strategies. I don't do commercial properties. Maybe commercial properties might interest some people. So find the method that you think interests you and just start studying that method and kind of maybe get rid of all the other distractions and just focus in on that one method and give yourself time. So it's just something you said. I couldn't let that pass when you said that. So just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Hey, well, thank you so much, everybody. Alex, if somebody just wants to learn more about what you do, where's a place that maybe people can track you down just to see what you do?
I've got a lot of construction pictures from contracting on Facebook, Juergens Property Development, also Instagram, same, Juergens. So,
awesome. Well, thank you, man. I appreciate you coming out and talking with me. We'll have to definitely do this again. Hopefully this will be a blessing to some folks. So thank you again. Appreciate it.
You bet.
All right. Awesome. Hey, thank you guys for watching and tuning in to the Wealth Exchange. As always, it's been your man Ephraim Jackson. Appreciate you joining in. Tune in next time for another episode. And remember, who the sun sets free is free indeed. Break every chain that binds you. Get free. Later.